seems to be mentioning that they know all the specifics or the details of it, but I've not seen anywhere to track down the actual 860-page doc.
I heard 800. I heard it was 1,500.
Oh, okay, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, who knows?
That must be the changes they've been trying to get through. Make sure all the senators and congressmen get another mill added to their package for being there.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. So I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I just hit the record button, so we're going to be recording. So first, I just want to kind of thank everyone here just for joining us today. My name is Francisco. I am the owner of My Turn Media Group. We're a digital marketing agency specifically for the real estate professionals. And the idea here is really to kind of figure out how we can adapt during these times, especially, specifically realtors. And that's why I like to introduce a couple of, I would say, really good friends of mine and really good people in this space. For those of you guys who don't know, we have Eric Forney for the Forney Group. He's the CEO of Forney Group, and we invited him because we think he has a lot of great expertise, and he's been in this industry for quite a few years now, and he's just been killing it, doing really well, and we really value what he has to say. The next person, of course, is Dustin Ruhl. Dustin Ruhl is CEO of Ironclad Group. Ironclad Group is a real estate investing company. Again, he's been in I've known him for several years. We've been doing conversations and business somewhat on and off as far as marketing is concerned. And we really love to, have him here as well and just value his input. And then we also have Tony Scelzo. Tony Scelzo is a business coach for Ceemless with a C. And he's also a value member in this community. And he's definitely been really good at coaching me, coaching Dustin. I'm sure a lot of other people may know who Tony Scelzo is. And he's an overall great guy as far as, his business knowledge, business acumen. And we figured this would be a great idea for us to kind of get together and really figure this out. Because, Dustin and I and Tony, we kind of got together and we're like, well, what do we do? How do we adapt to this? What is it that we have to do, or what, so there's going to be a couple of different things. First, I'm going to ask, the panel. So everyone else, if you can, please stay muted. But Eric, Dustin, and Tony when he gets on. So this is going to be very informal, but we're just kind of going to talk a little bit about, what is the state of the state? What is going on? What is going on? How can we actually overcome this? How can we stay calm? And then other people have questions in regards to marketing, like should we continue marketing? Should we not? How do we do that? So without further ado, Eric, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time here. And kind of just walk us through, what do you think some of the things that we should be concerned or maybe work on, or as far as your business, or how are you reacting to this?
So I think there's in my dealings so far with multiple different agents, because I wear a couple different hats, Keller Williams office owner, as well as run a real estate team. And we were pacing to do well over 300 transactions this year as a team, and I guess that remains to be seen whether or not that'll happen, of course. But in my dealings with agents across all brands, both locally and nationally, I think we see those that fall into probably three different camps, and those that are informed and preparing or are prepared, those that are still in a state of denial, and that they think this is a really short-term staycation. And then there seems to be another camp of those who are hopelessly optimistic that life will be normal again as we know it, sometime around Easter, I guess. And so there's a varying degree of different agents and what they're doing as a result of either what messages they're taking in from the company they're with or from the people that they're surrounding themselves with. Just really is dictating how people act in this current marketplace.
Yeah, no, that's really good. So, you know, we've been kind of, I'm in a couple of Facebook groups with you, and so is Dustin, and we see a lot of things. I just talked to you about it a few minutes. What's
Yeah.
his name? John Maxwell, I think.
Yeah.
In regards to, you know, this is a time where we need to step up, really
Yeah.
to be leaders and be that beacon to everyone. So I thought it was really cool that you shared that, and it was really enlightening. And in times of leadership, what do you think as a leader? What should we do? How do we prepare for this as far as leadership is concerned?
So a lot of it depends on which one of those camps you're in and which one you want other people to be in, I guess. You know, I've seen some leaders across the community who still seem to be in that hopelessly optimistic camp where it is business as usual. And the reality is that all of the executive orders here, at least in Indiana, say that it's business as usual. Of course, we know that we can go out right now and show houses. We can go to closings, go on listing appointments, all of those things that allow us to do our job itself. The challenge that I have with that frame of mind, and listen, I would much prefer to be optimistic and to be sunshine and rainbows. The reality, though, is that with nearly 4 million jobless in the last week, with more expected to come, it's hard to be naive and optimistic all at the same time. So
Mm-hmm.
as a leader, I think that crafts your message, which is not necessarily one of like statistics and data, but probabilities. So am I better off to prepare my people to be optimistic that nothing will change, or am I better off to prepare them that everything will change and we're going to war, therefore prepare accordingly? And you know, we've kind of taken the approach of we're going to war, prepare accordingly, because we'd
Mm-hmm.
rather be more prepared on the expense cutting, on the focus and time management aspect of things, and increasing lead generation, as opposed to thinking that everything will go back to normal after everyone is able to go to work. Because my challenge in saying that is when I factor the probabilities, I look at it and say, what's the downside to having my agents cut their expenses, or what's the downside to having them increase their lead generation activity? And as long as they're not cutting essential expenses, which I would really call investments, as long as they're not cutting their essentials to operate their business, I see no downside in having people be prepared.
Yeah, no, that's great. No, I think you're spot on. I agree. Um, so what ways? So I'm thinking as realtors, what ways can we, you know, have you tried or closing deals? How is this impacting the way you actually do transactions? Do you see a delay in closings, or how? What do you see on your end?
So we're surprisingly not seeing as much of a fallout as I would expect. You know, there are those contingencies of buyers and sellers who are scared to act. And then, of course, on that same frame of reference, there are still sellers who think values won't decrease, and therefore, you know, maybe are not as willing to accept offers that are below list price, or below whatever that number is that they initially set their intention on. And so that's a unique twist. And what it confirms about human behavior and human psychology is exactly what economics knows, which is you can think that you have the right plan of attack from as far as like an economic stimulus plan or an economic philosophy, and yet human psychology or human behavior may not play out accordingly. And so what I've done with my agents is I've encouraged them to break down their days into three priorities, because everyone that I'm talking to that like is working harder than they were a month ago, and yet they feel incredibly less productive. And that's because we're all trying to do something brand new. And by brand new, what I mean is we're trying to build just foundational habits that we're not used to. And the marketplace conditions are changing so rapidly that we have to adapt to what has ordinarily not been urgent and make things more urgent. And that blows up your time blocks. And so how we've tried to battle through that is look at it and go, okay, based on where we are right now and where we think we'll be in 30 days and 60 days, what are the 3 priorities we have every day? What do we automatically say yes to? And then what does everything else procrastinate for later? Mm-hmm. And so for us as a team, what we've decided is that it's income generation first and foremost. Anything that generates revenue takes first priority. Anything that is revenue protection is second priority. And then anything that's expense cutting or expense management is third priority. Which means then if the phone is ringing or if there are new problems that get brought to someone on the team, if it fits into one of those 3 priorities, say yes to it. If not, procrastinate it for later. And so we've retooled a portion of like how we're doing business to try to fall in line with that. So like for instance, I almost never communicate via cell phone. Just from a time on task standpoint, it becomes a challenge to get my priorities done if I'm answering calls all day. And so anything that comes into my inbox, I'll use Boomerang, which is an email application. Mm-hmm. I'll use Boomerang and I'll basically kick it out of my inbox so that I don't have to see it until either evening or next week or 2 weeks from now, if it's something that doesn't align with one of those 3 priorities. Yeah. Because it just can't come into my focus if we're going to be where we want to be 60, 90 days from now, and be a distraction.
That's really good. That's really powerful. Yeah, because I was going to ask you, how do you manage your day-to-day? Boomerang is a good tool. I know in Gmail you can just snooze an email and it kicks it back out. So that's really powerful. So as far as showings and stuff, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know Indiana, you guys, I mean, realtors are still considered essential. So you guys are still going out to the houses. Have any of your salespeople gone on Zoom calls with buyers or sellers? How does that look like, if you can tell us?
Yeah, so we're seeing some of both. I've not personally done any Zoom conversations with any consumers, but I have talked with a couple of different agents who have. Otherwise, we're still seeing some buyers want to go out and take a look at houses. I just talked to a buyer yesterday who said if there is a 3D virtual tour, we'd rather see that, but at their price point, they're still going to have to go out and see houses. So our expectations we would do that this weekend. For those that have to move, they're going to go see homes. For those that don't have to move or are interested, kind of in that like voyeur / shopping phase, they're not likely to go out and look at houses. But a lot of it, I think, depends somewhat too on on age brackets.
Okay. Yeah.
It seems the first time buyer, from what we've encountered thus far, and I hate making a broad generalization like this, but it seems that what we've found, if I were to just stereotype this, and I hate to, is that we've seen more first-time buyers go out, be willing to go see homes in person than maybe second or third-time buyers.
That's interesting. No, that's good. Yeah, I know I've seen posts and people are guessing. Really, that's what they're doing, is guessing what the values of properties are going to be, because we really, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen any data to suggest one way or the other. It's just more of speculation. And for some people, especially Dustin, you would.
What I see from a standpoint of my business, I flip about 80 to 90 properties a year, buy rehab, fix up, and then sell. And I got quite a few in the market now. What I think is going to happen is I don't think you're going to see, because there's no transactions happening. So you don't have any real data to kind of go off of. I was talking to Eric about this earlier. I think what's happening is what people should be doing if you're trying to sell your property is not try to list it at the current market value, but listed at 95% of the market value. I've seen activity by doing that. And then I think what happens is once people start getting more confident to go back out, if you're a seller and you're listing at 95% of market value, you're probably going to find yourself in multiple offer situations, and so which will then reestablish the market. So because this isn't totally because this crisis we're in as a country isn't because of one key thing except the virus, I don't see real estate really getting hit, but you will see probably a 5% from what I've heard and watched in different webinars and different mastermind calls I've been on. We'll probably need to be settling for about a 5% off the current market value.
Yeah, I know NAR's chief economist initially said that there'd be little drop in home values, but a 10% estimated drop in total cumulative number of transactions. And I think a lot of people are saying that same thing. Where I struggle is debating on whether or not that's optimistic because it's the right message to tell, or if that's a byproduct of not anticipating the amount of unemployed that we've seen. When NAR released that finding, they had no idea that the country would have record-breaking unemployment rates. And that's the first wave, right? I mean, there's some talk that this would be 5 to 8 times the amount of unemployed from 2012, which means that, as you know, Dustin, it then creates this domino effect of, let's say it is purely just service workers. I look at it and go, okay, there's rents not being paid to landlords, which means may or may not pay to mortgage companies. Homeowners may or may not pay their mortgages, which creates a different domino effect. I think there's this unemployment rate is a much bigger deal than people are giving notice in real estate. But with saying that, I hope I'm wrong. The good news is if I'm not, at least we're prepared by doubling our activity and by reducing our expenses to get out in front of that.
Do you think, Eric, low shortage of inventory offsets that?
Yeah, as long as this foreclosure barrence stays in place, and some of these eviction parameters, I think, will help with that, because otherwise, as you know, that creates a whole different domino effect of inventory. And so part of it, I guess, depends how every one of these random unknowns from the stimulus plan goes into effect, and how long we're all outside of work. Because I know that Trump is targeting that mid-April date. The challenge is that, as you and I were talking, I don't know what the parameters are from a governance standpoint between presidents and governors, or presidents and governors and mayors, whether that allows everyone to go back to work simultaneously. And if everyone is not back to work and this drags out closer to May or mid-May, I think we have a whole different issue from an unemployment perspective. Because from my vantage point, as a business owner, we're not planning to do this on the team side of things, but there's almost no downside to layoffs right now, because the government has said, hey, we're going to pay your laid off people at their market rate, and we're not going to hit you heavily to do that. We're not going to penalize business owners for layoffs as a result of this, and then we're going to pay your people at their current employed rate, which means you're almost best off to do layoffs as a business owner. You can then decide whether or not your business has grown to rehire them. The challenge is that I see is I think a lot of people will have adapted between now and, if that's May, to not necessarily go rehire those people. Because if you've cut your expenses, if you've cut your or increased your efficiencies of business, there may not be a need in the marketplace to rehire those laid off employees.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of business owners use this as kind of a excuse of why they're letting their D and C players go.
Yep.
And, more likely, cutting fat isn't a bad thing. Especially now, they do, as they're taken care of. with this government package, I mean, they're taken care of, so it's easier to let go. But yeah, it's a good time to really reevaluate your business and game plan for the future for sure.
You know, one of the things that we did, Dustin, is like from a layoff perspective, you know, I was dead broke in 2012 at one point, and what I learned through going through that experience is I would never put myself in that position again. And what I learned was that once your credit score goes down and you have a small amount of money on hand, it is that much more challenging to actually get money, even if you're good for it, when you need it. And so a lot of these opportunities kind of get shut off or are rolling. And so we actually looked at this as a way to increase efficiencies via layoffs. So we actually did lay off 2 employees from a framework of, you know, we've got a front desk receptionist. My vision of 10 years from now is that we don't have front desks, and that we can use technology to become more effective, more efficient, and more profitable. And so, you know, I've been using this analogy with that, and in that there was a day you used to go to the grocery store and somebody would greet you when you walked into the grocery store, and I haven't checked out with a human in 18 months at the grocery store. And so there's multiple iterations of evolution, and the problem is that none of us want to change. None of us want to actually change. Well, now is the best opportunity to make changes, because we're forced into massive change from an environment perspective. Go become infinitely more efficient as a result, and never put back in place some of those inefficiencies that we potentially get rid of. So we've looked at it as a way to how do we cut expenses, how do we get leaner, how do we become more efficient, and technologically adapt in order to position ourselves 10 years from now.
No, that's really good. So as far as marketing, I know you guys, I think it's important to reevaluate your business, of course. Yeah. Right? We still want to be calm. We want to know the facts. We want to understand. I really see most people really wanting to. It's always hard to filter out also the what's happening in the media and what's actually fact. And I think as good leaders, and you guys would agree, is it's about making sure that we are always, you know, well informed, or at least we locate where the facts are, so that way we can better educate ourselves and our market. Because at the end of the day, what we don't want to do is we don't want the media to dictate what is happening in Indiana or Indianapolis or whatever it is. We should be the ones who can gain that. And as leaders, and obviously that's why we're here on this call, so that way we can drive that message, right? So we're the ones who are saying, hey, this is what we're seeing, and more now than ever, we should be doing more of these, right? We should be that beacon, that that leader, the beacon of positivity is what I've heard somebody else say. And now, especially in the real estate investing world, it's time to be, you know, more creative as possible, as creative as you can be. Now, I think Tony is on the call now. Tony, are you on? You might be on mute.
He's on mute.
Because I want to make sure that Tony can chime in whenever he feels like he needs to chime in. But as far as marketing, let's kind of get both perspectives. I know Dustin is in the real estate investing, and then Eric as a realtor and real estate agent and broker. Let's start with Eric. Eric, what do you see, or as far as marketing, and then we'll get Dustin's perspective, and then I'll kind of chime in. What are you guys doing? Is it still normal? You guys still, you know, increasing, buckling down? What are you guys doing?
So I think there's a couple of different ways to look at this, right? You have your marketing that goes to the consumer side of things, and then we have marketing from a leadership and agent growth perspective. And so on the agent side of things, as far as, you know, acquisition of agents, growth of agents, on that side, now more than ever, I think it's important to be visible. And when you hit a level of crisis, oddly enough, if you just go back and look at like President Bush, his approval ratings during 9/11 and what they were at that point in time versus where they were 4 years later, he had almost a 92% approval rating during 9/11. And that's because we all remember just how incredibly visible he was during this moment of crisis. And so many people actually put a ton of faith into the efforts that he was doing as a president at that time. And if you look, actually, President Trump, his ratings have gone up as well during this time of crisis. And so now more than ever as a leader, it's incredibly important to stand out and differentiate yourself from the noise. And so it's more visible than ever, which has actually been kind of fun because it gives you the ability to have a calm and well thought out message that is both realistic and hopeful, and to be in dialogue with people who are fearful. I think that we see this go in phases. I keep talking about this grieving process of crisis, in that it starts in denial, and we've seen some people get excited about it, excited because it means opportunity, and then a few days later, then it goes into that fear stage of, well, this is really hard right now. People are answering the phones, but they're not doing what they said they were going to do 2 weeks ago. And then it creates that fear of, well, what happens if I don't get paid, or what happens if? And that fear cycle is where a lot of people can get stuck. And so as a leader, trying to help people work through that, to understand, A, that's normal, and B, the way to get out of it is to take more action, and to take more intentional action, and to also understand that that's normal and okay. So from that perspective, it's a little bit of a different message from a leadership standpoint. From a consumer standpoint, you look at it and your message it changes as well, in that what was potentially a message of like prosperity and of multiple offers, your home is now worth more than ever before. The fear of loss may need to be the ideal message for the consumer. Is, if we're 3 weeks from now, you might retailer your message to being concerned about how much money you may lose if you don't make a price reduction now, or if you don't have your home on the market in the next week, 2 weeks, whatever that is, or pricing ahead of the market and getting ahead of the market, I think is the current message instead of what it was 6 weeks ago.
Awesome. Yeah, appreciate that. No, I completely understand. Dustin, what's your take on your marketing efforts? What are you guys doing? Any ideas, suggestions? I mean, because what I've always said is, there are going to be two types of people in the real estate professional space. It's either the ones who are buckling up and actually investing, or investing even more, and then changing their messaging, like Eric said, or some that are not going to be spending money in marketing at all. Now, of course, I would encourage to stay marketing, because what's happening right now in the market is, when what we foresee, and we have already kind of saw this a little bit, is people are no longer marketing. People are kind of pulling out. They're taking a little bit less of a spending on their marketing. And what happens is that would be a huge opportunity for all the ones that are spending money, because it puts them in a different position. What do you think, Dustin?
Well, you guys are exactly right. What I find fascinating, and this happens all the time, as you're heading into, when something, bad happens, whether it be a recession or 9/11 or 2008 and now, people are always sitting back saying, well, I can't wait to capitalize on a downturn. And we're at the downturn. And now you hear the same people saying, well, I don't know what to do. And so everybody likes to make excuses no matter what market you're in. And so, there's a couple of things. I think there's 3 things that we're, as an organization, doing, because we market directly to, we market the motivated sellers. So we buy distressed assets, assets that you can provide value to and sell for a profit. And so we, number one, direct mail marketing is our number one go-to. We do not plan on backing off from that. My reason being on that is we spend probably about $400,000 a year in marketing, and I'll continue to spend that monthly. A few reasons. One, our calls will probably be down, but when they do call, that means they're extremely motivated and need help. And so, more than likely, we're probably going to be able to offset the lack of units with profit. So we don't want to be, those people missing out on those opportunities. And and like Eric said, we want to be the face. We want to be still out there when people aren't. And so our competition has obviously reduced itself by probably 50-60% in a very competitive space that we're in. So it would be just brutal for our business long term if we don't capitalize and continue to market.
D, can I make a comment?
Yeah.
So I think there's a balance here to be taken, and what we're taking with our clients is kind of doing, war planning, and we're looking at it and saying, what happens if this lasts 6 weeks? What happens if this lasts 3 months? What happens if this lasts 6 months? And then doing plans based on those scenarios, so everybody knows what to do. So you've got a playbook for your team, for your people, and for yourself to kind of maintain your own mental health. You know what I mean? I think we can be positive, and we cannot let the media control our minds, but the media controls the market, and it's driving a lot of what the market psychology does. So we can't ignore it. And so what I'm trying to get our clients to do is really get their head around, what does good, better, best look like, or what does worst case scenario look like and best case scenario look like, and then create the game plan for all the above. I think there's 3 plans. I think there's a lot of things that will change based on how many weeks out. I think to the earlier comment about the unemployment rate. What I find very interesting is most of the people I'm talking to are holding on to their employees and covering payroll, and they're carrying them through. And we wouldn't have seen that in the last recession we had. No one was doing that. No one was afraid of losing their good people. And I think that goes back to the underlying economic factors that drove the Trump bump. Was we had a good economy. All other factors did drive that. It wasn't undermined by the real estate environment, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, comment to that.
I think there's so much there too, just from a sense that obviously, as you know, you can find a number of different stories or a number of different stances as far as the economic position that we were in and anticipated recessions. Ray Dalio, world's largest hedge fund manager, has been talking about the credit cycle of 2020, 2021 and what that would look like to be extrapolated. And so, at Keller Williams, it's been something that we've kind of been talking about forecasting for the last couple of years. So I've been a little more prepared for that reason. And in long-term thinking, that's why we opted to, what do we think is actually the best thing for the business and the best thing for the people, was take advantage of what is currently known, which is what's known is that the government is providing some amazing alternative options for people if you don't think they fit into a long-term plan. So do the right thing for those people by providing them that option. And then, in listening to Dustin, one of the things that jumped out at what you said that I think is so important for a traditional agent to understand is you said, what I know is that I'll be talking to people who are committed to moving. And agents, for the most part, spend so much of their time working on people who are interested and not going after the committed. And so now more than ever, it's incredibly imperative that people are working on the committed. Otherwise, as you know, it goes several weeks or months without income, and not everyone is prepared to do that. So figuring out a way to get between the exchange of income by working with those who are committed as opposed to those who are interested is the name of the game right now, in my opinion.
Yeah. And, I come, my background's in finance and banking. Yep. I'm from a heavy sales background. And in any business, sales is, what typically gets you through the hard times. And, when you think about not making it harder on yourself, but thinking, working smarter, you have this database. That's why businesses have CRMs. You have this database of people that, now is the time to definitely be following up because the motivation has completely changed for people. And, you know, so obviously we're going to, you know,
For sure.
spending money on marketing, but you also need to talk about, you know, making follow-up calls to all of your clients that have recently purchased with you, or all the clients that say, I'm not interested in selling right now. You never know, job loss, whatever. I would be if I was an agent, and I'm, you know, my agents that call motivated sellers, but I would be pounding the phones, trying to talk to as many consumers as possible, that you never know what their motivation is now. So, and then also referral base for me, I'm talking to as many agents as I can, because agents are usually a direct source to a motivated seller. And most people don't want to be in their house right now. And so if you can look for a path of least resistance of, you know, I don't want people through here, but I need to sell. And you have an agent, hey, you know, I'm a buyer. And so, you know, those are type of things that we also are trying to focus on to reduce our cost per buy. And our job is to, obviously, our lead cost. If we do more business, no matter what I spend, as long as my cost per buy is down, you know, that's ultimately what I look for in my business.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And then what are ways that we can maybe, because Eric mentioned earlier how he's looking at 30 days out, 60 days out, and 90 days out. And I think that's really fascinating to me. And I think that's the way we should all be looking at this, right? For our business. What can we do 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and create a game plan for each? But what are some quick wins? For example, I've heard some people saying, hey, we're just going to follow up on all the people who didn't buy or sell from me in the past, and who may still be out there, who haven't done a transaction yet. Or what other quick wins? We'll start with Eric and then Dustin. Have you guys tried to implement, or have you come up with, or any suggestions that you can give to our audience as far as what can I do at least for the next 30 days, the next 60 days, and the next 90 days? Eric?
Yeah. So the first thing that I've been encouraging everyone to do is to get real vulnerable with their expenses. You know, go through the last 90 days of your P&L, or through your bank account, through your credit card statement, and put it all out in front of you. Just get really clear on where your money has been the last 90 days. And then we started prioritizing ours. We ranked them 1 through 5, of, you know, 1 being like, why are we paying for this anyway? And then 5 is mission critical, no chance we can get rid of it. And we went ahead and killed off everything that was a 1 and 2. Because it seemed like the quickest way to inject revenue. And no, I say this I have 53 pendings right now. Okay, so we're not in a position where we need to be worried about cash flow. But what I don't know is, if 50% of those fall apart, what does it look like? Or 75% of those fall apart, what does it look like? So I want to at least be prepared by controlling the controllable. And what I can control is my expenses and my activities. So I got out in front of the expenses early to get rid of anything that wasn't mission critical. And then we went and said, okay, this is our tripwire plan. If we have 53 pendings right now, if we drop to 44, here's what expenses get cut. And here's what activities get increased as a result of that. If we go to 36 pendings, here's what gets cut. Here's what our activities look like. And created kind of a plan of triage over the course of the next 30, 60, 90 days. And then I always want to know, what does that pipeline of income look like? And what's my pipeline of expenses look like, so that I can make strategic decisions, knowing that if we hit a recession similar to where things were in 08, 09, cash is the most important thing that I can have on hand. Having been the exact inverse of that, I learned the hard way that not having cash becomes a real challenge. And so lining up the business to be sustainable long term is, I think, first and foremost. And then from an activity standpoint, you know, we've got everybody saying, any lead that came in the last 90 days, talk with them and figure out where they are still in the buying process. And then secondarily, figure out where you can find the committed. And that doesn't necessarily have to be playing one-on-one. there may be other avenues for reaching out to those people that are committed to moving in spite of the market. Because we've never seen a market at zero. In fact, yesterday, at least in the Indianapolis board, there were 139 new listings. So there are sellers somewhere, and we had 2 of them. So what I'd love to know is what were the other 137 doing that we weren't in front of? And so figuring out that gap.
Eric, I think that's a big thing right there, right? Like, I mean, and Dustin hit it earlier. You can't underestimate kind of the Grant Cardone factor. We may be 20 to 30% down, but if you're doing 10 times the activity, you may be up on the competition or even up on what you were doing before, right? I mean, that's what we're trying to get. How do we touch these guys 10 times as much? I mean, that to me is something it's underestimated in these times.
Yeah, so the challenge though I have with that, Tony, is getting other people to understand that that's what it takes right now, because everyone is used to this business being easy through a strong marketplace and a strong economy the last 5 years. So it's enrolling everyone else on the boat with you to ensure that they understand it is 10x time. Yeah. And if they're not on the boat willing to be 10x time, we're probably just not the boat to be on right now.
I'll tell you one thing. The people I'm taking the most advice from today are the people that have been in the same business, been an agent or a broker for the last 20 years. 20 years. And they've been through all of the cycles, and they've stayed through the thick and thin. And what Eric would said, the first thing you should be doing is looking at expenses and trying to create cash. That's the first thing everybody has said is get with your banks, get with the expenses that you have, get that right first, and then work on to step 2 and 3. And so, that to me, that's what we're trying to create is an opportunity, an atmosphere for us to be around people that, they're able to help us through this time. And not one of them had said, stop marketing.
Yeah.
Not one of them. So if they've been an agent or broker for 20 years and they said, no, first thing you need to do is stop marketing, then I'd be listening to that. But not one of them had said stop marketing. Not one.
David Brenton's on this call, and David and I met probably 30 or so days ago, and obviously David has way more experience from a time on task perspective than I do, and at a high level. And one of the awesome things about networking as local agents and masterminding at a high level is exactly what you said, Dustin, is able to extract that wisdom from others. And when I think about David I'm sure is still marketing at a high level right now, to your point. And then David, I remember us talking a month ago where you said that in the recession it got down to be you and a couple of other your agents. You had quite a bit of contraction from a staffing standpoint, and that kind of sticking out in my head going, okay, what is that contingency plan staff wise if we get in that exact same spot? What can I learn from exactly that nugget David just told me about what his business looked like 10 years ago? How does it apply to my business? And then how does it apply right now? What does my daily activity look like if we get to this level of pendings and this level of pendings? Who am I likely to still be in the boat with if we get there? Because I don't want to have to make snap decisions that may not be in the best interest of where we're going long term in order to make short term errors in judgment. So I got a ton of value out of my conversation with David, because there's somebody who's done it at a high level before or after, probably several of these ups and downs. So
yeah, no, that's awesome. No, this is good, and obviously this is the time to do this, right? To get together as a community and really discuss these because these are conversations that need to be had. We don't want necessarily the media to drive the market, as everyone keeps talking about. We want it to be where we can express and tell everybody, hey, this is what we're seeing, this is how we're coping, and this is how we can, because when you can cope through this, you're going to come out better in the end. So a lot of people ask, well, what numbers are people seeing? I've had questions come in through either chat or through email when they registered. And some of them were like, well, how is COVID-19 affecting your lead generation or marketing, if at all? We've kind of already touched bases on this a little bit. We've seen that, we're still marketing. We're still pushing because right now I think, especially with everyone being at home, everyone is on their device, right? More than now, people are on Facebook. People are on social media. And how do you capture those eyeballs? And so I think social media, obviously, it's a huge, huge opportunity, especially when there's less people as far as competition is concerned. But as far as conversions, I wonder, what is your take? I know this is going to be a little bit different, perhaps, maybe between your company, Eric, and then your company, Dustin. But as far as conversions, do you still see the same conversions? Are you still seeing what other marketing avenues? And I kind of want to go a little bit more granular because I know with Facebook, especially if you have a list of people, this is a great time to retarget that audience on Facebook. Retarget that audience on social media. And another way of doing that is making sure you have maybe a tracker or a code on your website, so that way you're retargeting your audience for people who go on your website or have gone on your website. That's why it's really important for that retargeting. But Eric, can you maybe give us an example of something that you're currently doing marketing wise?
Yeah. So, it's a little bit more challenging for us to track because from a marketing standpoint, we're not nearly as effective and efficient at the social media marketing as far as like retargeting and pixels and all, like you suggested. So a large portion of our marketing that we do comes from third-party lead generation sites, like the Zillow's, Realtor.coms, the Boomtowns, just kind of various sources of the lead aggregators. And so I'm getting secondhand information from those larger corporations. And what I know is that it was rather quickly when Zillow said that they saw at least a 50% drop in their online traffic from a call-in perspective. And from the standpoint of consumers who were saying, I want to see this house or I want to talk to an agent, they saw a huge drop. And so that drop combined with the high cost of lead generation caused a number of our competitors to drop out of the marketplace, which created a gap in the market to of course increase lead generation expenses and lead generation investment costs. So I've not seen that on a really effective local level from a pixel standpoint or from a retargeting standpoint, but I know that third-party lead aggregators have had quite a bit of a challenge in generating revenue right now. I mean, you saw Zillow, Realtor.com, or sorry, Zillow, Open Door, both got out of the iBuyer business, so which I think is a big deal.
Let's touch a little bit about that. Sorry, Dustin, 1 second. But in regards to that, a lot of people were concerned. Oh my gosh, these big companies like Zillow or Open Door, they're all getting out of the market, and it again causes people to react in a different way. They're saying, oh my gosh, they must know something that we don't. And what a lot of people don't realize is, well, first, that's a good thing. I think they're out of the market because now that gives us opportunities. I don't think they were really heavily doing a lot in Indianapolis anyways. But then second, they're just a different business model. It's a completely different model because they're dealing with smaller margins. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton. I mean, I know this is a interesting hot topic of future prediction standpoint, but from the agent perspective and on Dustin's end from the wholesale investment perspective, in my opinion, that iBuyer model was a real threat to the industry. In that, in fact, I've got a graph, oddly enough, that I keep on my desktop that showed their algorithms had gotten to about 1.8% below list price but 1.8% below market value as far as they were able to get just shortly before shutting down. They were able to get their numbers almost dead on from a resale perspective. And so, I think that Zillow looked at it, or some of these iBuyer models look at it as a way to generate revenue two ways. A, no one has figured out how to generate seller leads at a high level in our industry, and those are the most valuable. So one, it was an incredibly easy way to generate seller leads. And then two is, can you marginalize the entire transaction from a vertical integration standpoint? And I think that was a long-term goal. All of those are threats both to the investor business and the agent business. Crazy enough, I was in Huntington Beach at a Zillow event, and they at one point in time it indicated that in Dallas, Texas, that 74% of sellers contacted them directly about buying their home before listing on the MLS. Only 13% of those that contacted Zillow listed with them or sold directly, yet 74% of sellers went there before going to an agent. And so that's a big threat, obviously, to my business, to Dustin's business, and to the agent industry. And this, to some degree, no matter how long it lasts, if it changes the iBuyer model or shuts it down for the foreseeable future, a temporary drop in income is worth the long-term payoff, I think.
Yeah. Dustin, do you have anything to add to that, or your opinion on?
No, you guys.
I got a comment to that, Francisco. I got a different perspective on this. I mean, I've seen this now. We've gone through two of these with digital marketing firms, and two serious downturns. And we've always seen people that were our clients pare back their spend, lower their spend, even cancel their spend. But what we've also found is that new buyers emerge almost immediately. People that have been sitting on cash, that are well funded, that are willing to invest in their business. We've always picked up clients in downturns like this, and we picked up really good clients. So I do think, to Dustin's comment earlier, there is money that is sitting on the sidelines waiting for something like this and willing to invest against the masses that are exiting. And so that's really where we got to pick and choose the opportunities. Is, to Eric's point earlier about a lot of people getting out of the market, the open marketplaces to get into the cost per lead. I mean, the cost per lead can come down, and your conversion may come down 30%, but if your cost per lead goes in half, that's still good math. And I think really looking at it pragmatically in a spreadsheet is instead of, with the emotional side of the brain, is important to do at this point in time.
That's very well said, Tony. Thank you. Yeah, that's right. So as this meeting kind of comes to a close, is there anything else you guys want to add before I kind of make my closing comments?
I've got just not necessarily something I want to add, but maybe just a discussion in that. I always ask myself these ridiculous questions of, like, what do I not know that I don't know? Like, what is it that I'm missing, right? I'm always like seeking perfection and truth, and that's quite an annoying trait, yet has been fairly beneficial. So when thinking about that in this context, Dustin, having been from the finance and mortgage background, there's some rumblings that some of these servicers still have to pay mortgages, even in spite of this, almost national forbearance movement. What kind of impact does that have on a real estate market if that's the case?
I think the only thing, really at the end of the day, it's just prolonging a distressed asset from hitting the market.
Yeah.
So I think, really, it prolongs it. It stopped what was currently happening in the process. And I don't know how much again, it's a matter of inventory level. How much is out there sitting still? Distressed, people aren't paying. I don't know the answers to that, but
yeah.
It's just all a reflection, and it just only affects the amount of distressed inventory on the market, and I don't know the answer of what that'll look like. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
I know we got an email that circulated yesterday that at least one local lender has opted to not take FHA loans right now as a result of HUD saying that they would, not foreclose on anyone, and potentially, 12 months of, I saw Trump said 12 months of forbearance on your mortgage if you're a HUD or Fannie Mae product, and the servicers appear to still have to pay those, even if the actual homeowner's not paying their mortgage. And so I know a couple of people exited.
I can tell you this: your borrowers that you guys are working with that are marginal, that are getting FHA loans, or they aren't going to get approved.
Yeah,
they're going to So that's going to affect. I mean, that's going to affect largely your first-time home buyer market a little bit.
Yeah. We're already seeing that, D. I've already talked to guys that even though the money's getting cheaper, the restrictions are getting tighter.
Yeah. I saw Quicken, for instance, still has to pay all of their notes, and despite whatever forbearance is going on in the marketplace, which means they said that if the predictions of those that will not pay their mortgage play out, it could be a catastrophic collapse from a Quicken standpoint. So I saw that today they were seeking funding and stimulus for that as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's what I think the president's trying to protect that. So back in 08, 9, 10, I used to work at Lehman Brothers. I don't know if you guys remember who Lehman Brothers was.
Yeah.
Just the largest bankruptcy in the world, I think. And so, so I worked for a subsidiary of Lehman Brothers called Aurora Loans. Aurora Loans, regardless if it was, government or not, we would still have to pay the investors, regardless. And so, but in our case, it was when Hope Now was created, when there was, government stepped in and they said, we'll pay you X amount percentage every month to help these borrowers so that way they can actually get approved for these forbearances. So then the government stepped in, and then that's when we were more inclined to do more modifications and because there was times where we were just wondering, well, do we just let these properties go to foreclosure, or do we try to forbear? We try to help them. And eventually the government stepped in, no more foreclosures. And then, so we had to help them. And then we try to plead with the government if they could give us some kind of incentive to do that. And obviously we came through the bailouts.
Yeah, I mean, that's the challenge is, as somebody in my position who, I've got a couple of different roles here. I look at my job as being the economist of choice for the consumer and for the real estate agent. And when I'm consulting with real estate agents, I think that having cash makes the most sense, which then leads me to the question that says, well, if you're not required with no negative ramifications to pay your mortgage for 180 days, and there's a bailout for the lender, if I'm advising an agent, I don't know if I could say that they should go out and pay their mortgage beginning April 1st, because that cash on hand may be the difference in outrunning a shutdown or not.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so I know we're kind of running out of time, but I want to open it up. So for other people, there's a chat box on your top right. You can always ask questions there, or if you want to, go ahead and unmute yourself. If you have any questions for any of us, this is the time where we have a few minutes to kind of do that. Or even if we want to ask each other more questions, we can do that too. So,
I've heard a lot of people saying that they think the investor market would be kind of the ideal lever to jump on from multiple transaction standpoint. With your experience in that, Dustin, does that make sense from your framework as far as a market to target right now?
As an agent?
Yeah,
I think so. I think if I'm an agent, because typically your investor market is dealing in cash or private financing of some sort that's not reliant on the market, so they can close quick typically. And then And because typically you're dealing now with a motivated seller. So that's what investors want. They want deals with that, with value add opportunities. So, I think the work smarter, not harder right now is definitely your low hanging fruit for sure. If you lock in, really at the end of the day, if you lock into a really good investor, they can make your life really easy.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them, are in and out of houses pretty quick, and they know what they want. Or a lot of them will, if you provide them, really good photos or FaceTime them while you're there, they'll make offers right then. They already know. So those are definitely good options to, as the home buying, the consumer market's a little down right now, would be jumping to the investor because they're looking to buy right now.
Yep.
One of the things we talked about before we jumped on this call, Dustin, was that the concept of if there are agents out there who are potentially facing a position where they're going to go a long period of time without any closings or without any closing income, the option to look at some different IRA and self 401k products. Can you touch on that just briefly?
Yeah, there's options out there. A lot of agents have been in corporate America. They've made kind of the switch over. And so you're sitting on some 401ks, old 401ks sitting out there. And there's options if you really need to what's called a self-directed IRA, a solo self-directed IRA. They actually allow you to borrow up to 50% of the value to pay off debt or use it for whatever, no more than 50 grand. So there's people that I've spoke to that are taking advantage of that opportunity just to get cash in the bank, for whatever reason. So there's options out there. You just got to look at them.
Yep. Are there any other questions, guys, before I make any of my closing comments? Even from the audience or anyone here, anyone can ask. So if not, how are ways that this, the people who attended? So first of all, I want to let you guys know, and I said it earlier, but on the call, but right now we are recording this, so we will be sending out a recording of this. We'll all be putting this on social media, and you're more than welcome to, once you get it, you can share with your group, your people, your audience, whoever you are with. And then, but a couple of key takeaways here is, and if you guys want to add to this, you can. We're stay calm, acknowledge what is happening, but stay calm, know the facts. I think it's time for us as leaders to step up. Everyone is a leader. Anyone who has influence over anyone is a leader. This is not the time really to wait this out, right? We have to be a beacon of positivity. And how do we create more content to see the positive side of it? How can we explain to others, hey, by sharing this recording, that'll be helpful for others. By creating your own groups and inviting others to your group to share the same message, I think is something that would be very important. And also, if you have the resources, keep marketing. Keep marketing as best as you can. Be top of mind for everyone. For those who don't have a lot of resources, how can you spend more time on creating content? It doesn't have to be produced on a high budget. It literally could be just an iPhone and you just talking about, hey, this is what I have. Here's a property I'm made. And just make it so that way people know that, when they come out of this, they're like, hey, I remember what this guy did, or I remember what that guy did. Or even a good example, El Emporium, they're still paying their employees. When this is all said and done, not that El Emporium was not already busy, but I'm gonna be going there all the time. So it's just one of those things that are kind of takeaways. If you have liquidity, if you have cash, this is good. It's definitely going to be helpful for you in this market. And I think I really thank you guys for being on this call, and I really appreciate it. Again, stay tuned. We'll share this link to everyone else once it's uploaded. Anything else? Any last remarks?
I think you nailed it on the head, man. It's just a matter of staying grounded and understanding that you know exactly what to do. It's just take more action. It's a different environment, and maybe a different conversation. It is just still two humans having human conversations, and everything else is just the fear of the future. And the reality is, we should have been fearful of our future every single day. None of us have ever known what tomorrow was going to be, and yet we just had this illusion that we did. And so today is really no different than every other previous day in that regard. So it's no drama needed to the data and just the facts, and be mindful that it's just another day in paradise. All things considered, this is incredibly life is incredibly good.
Yeah, amen to that. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for your time. Stay tuned. We'll go ahead and share this. Eric, for your time. Thank you, Dustin. Thank you, Tony. And you guys have a very safe day. All right, take care.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
See you.
Bye.